The air was tense that evening on the news panel. A well-known liberal commentator, David Sterling, sat across from a group of guests discussing public figures and their influence. The topic shifted to Melania Trump, the former First Lady, and Sterling's words grew sharp. "Melania is nothing more than a figurehead, no substance, no backbone," he said with a cruel smirk. His words cut deep, reducing her years of dedication to a shallow caricature. Gasps rippled through the audience. In the Trump family's home, Melania sat quietly, watching the screen. Her face was calm, but her eyes glistened with hurt. Beside her, Barron Trump clenched his fists, his face a storm of emotions. At just 18 years old, he was no longer the shy boy the world had once seen. He had grown tall, confident, and fiercely protective of his family. "Enough," Barron muttered under his breath. Donald Trump, sitting across the room, noticed his son's rising anger. "Barron, don't let it get to you," he said, his tone softer than usual. But Barron wasn't listening. He rose, his towering frame commanding attention. "Mom deserves better," he said, determination burning in his eyes. No one in the room knew what he planned to do next. The next morning, the Trump family's PR team received an unexpected request from Barron. "I want to respond to Sterling," he said firmly. His calm but resolved tone startled even his father, known for his strong opinions. Donald studied his son. "Are you sure about this?" he asked, his voice carrying a rare note of concern. Barron nodded. "Mom has always taught me to stand up for what's right. I can't let her be humiliated like this." The media invitation was sent out, and within hours, the story spread. Barron Trump speaks out? What could he possibly have to say? The headlines questioned. Skeptics doubted the young man could handle the pressure. On the day of the press conference, the room was packed. Cameras flashed, reporters whispered, and social media buzzed with anticipation. Donald Trump stood to the side, his face unreadable, while Melania sat in the front row, her expression a mix of pride and unease. When Barron stepped onto the stage, the room fell silent. He stood tall, dressed simply, his face serious. "Good afternoon," he began, his voice steady and deep. "I'm here today to defend my mother, not just as a son, but as someone who knows her heart." The audience leaned in, captivated by his poise. The world was about to see a side of Barron Trump they never imagined. Barron's voice filled the room with quiet strength. "My mother, Melania Trump, is not just a former First Lady. She is a mother, a wife, and a woman of great courage and grace." He paused, his eyes scanning the audience. "For years she has been criticized and misunderstood, but let me tell you about the woman I know. She has taught me kindness when it was easier to be angry, humility when the world expected arrogance, and strength when life became too heavy." Tears glistened in Melania's eyes. She wasn't used to public displays of affection, especially from Barron, who had always been reserved. Barron continued, his voice unwavering. "My mother's Be Best campaign wasn't just a slogan. She worked tirelessly to bring kindness and compassion to children across the country. She didn't do it for applause. She did it because she cares." The room was silent, the weight of his words sinking in. Even the most skeptical reporters seemed moved. For a moment, Barron looked directly into the camera, addressing Sterling and anyone who had ever belittled his mother. "My mother's legacy isn't measured by headlines. It's measured by the lives she's touched." And just like that, Barron Trump had turned the narrative on its head. The world was listening now. The room was frozen, in a stillness that felt almost unnatural. Barron's words hung heavy in the air, leaving everyone stunned. The reporters, who had come prepared to dissect and criticize, found themselves with nothing to say. For the first time, the media was witnessing a side of Barron Trump that no one could have imagined. Melania, sitting quietly in the front row, looked down at her hands. Her fingers trembled slightly, but there was a soft smile on her lips, a smile of pride and disbelief. She had always known her son was special, but this moment revealed a depth to his character she hadn't seen before. Donald Trump, standing off to the side, watched his son intently. He wasn't a man easily moved, but even he felt a lump rise in his throat. His youngest son, often shielded from the chaos of their public life, was now stepping into the fire. Barron's gaze moved across the crowd, unflinching. He spoke again, softer this time. "I've seen my mother stay silent in the face of criticism because she believes dignity is more powerful than words. But today, I cannot stay silent for her." The room waited. What would he say next? Barron took a deep breath. His voice carried a vulnerability that tugged at every heart in the room. "When I was younger, I didn't understand why my mother worked so hard. She would travel for days, sometimes weeks, and yet she always came home with a smile. I didn't realize it then, but she was trying to make the world kinder." He paused, his eyes glistening with emotion. "I remember one night, when I was about 8 years old. Mom had just returned from a long trip. I asked her why she didn't just stay home with me and Dad. She knelt down and said, 'Barron, when you're given a platform, you have a responsibility to use it for good, not for yourself, but for others.'" A murmur spread through the audience. The image of a young Barron, wide-eyed and innocent, clinging to his mother's words, stirred something in their hearts. "She taught me to care about people, even those who don't care about us," Barron continued. "And now, when I see people tear her down, I can't help but remember that night. She deserves to be defended, not because she's my mother, but because she's a good person." Tears began to well up in the crowd. The atmosphere was electric. Some audience members wiped their eyes discreetly, while others made no effort to hide their tears. Barron's raw honesty had struck a chord, especially with the older generation who understood the weight of family and legacy. David Sterling, the man whose cruel remarks had triggered this moment, sat in the back of the room, arms crossed. His confident smirk was gone, replaced by a shadow of discomfort. He shifted in his seat as Barron's words landed like quiet thunder. "I know I'm not the person you expected to hear this from," Barron said, glancing briefly toward the cameras. "But my mother has always told me that courage doesn't wait for the right moment. It acts when it's needed most." Melania's lips trembled as she fought back tears. She reached for Donald's hand, and he squeezed it gently. It was a rare moment of tenderness between them, and it didn't go unnoticed by the audience. Barron took one final look around the room before stepping back from the podium. "Thank you for listening. That's all I have to say." The silence erupted into applause, but not the usual clapping. It was slow, deliberate, and heartfelt. The world had just witnessed something unforgettable. After Barron stepped away from the podium, the applause echoed in the room like thunder. Donald Trump stood tall, his face showing a mix of pride and reflection. He had always been the center of attention, the one commanding the room, but this moment was different. His youngest son had taken the reins, and he had done so with grace and strength. As Barron walked back toward his family, Donald met him halfway. For a man known for his strong personality and showmanship, the hug he gave his son was uncharacteristically tender. "You were incredible," Donald whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Barron nodded, his expression calm but his heart racing. "I just said what needed to be said." Melania joined them, her eyes wet with tears. "You've made me so proud," she said softly, holding Barron's face in her hands. It was a rare moment of raw emotion for a family often in the public eye. Reporters snapped pictures, capturing the intimate family moment. Despite their cameras, there was a palpable respect in the room. The usual frenzy of questions was replaced by a reverent silence. For once, the world seemed to pause. But in the shadows, David Sterling watched, his face unreadable. Within hours, the press conference became the top story across every major news outlet. Clips of Barron's speech flooded social media, with hashtags like Barron Speaks and Defending Melania trending worldwide. Barron Trump, once considered the quiet member of the family, just proved he's a force to be reckoned with, one anchor said during a live broadcast. The public response was overwhelming. Older viewers, especially parents and grandparents, were deeply moved by Barron's heartfelt defense of his mother. Many commented on how his words reminded them of the importance of family values and standing up for loved ones. In a small town in Iowa, 68-year-old Margaret sat in her living room, tears streaming down her face. "I never thought I'd cry watching something like this," she whispered, clutching a tissue. "That boy has a good heart. Melania must be so proud." But not everyone was touched. Critics, including David Sterling, began to push back. On his late-night show, Sterling dismissed Barron's speech as a carefully orchestrated PR stunt. His words reignited the firestorm, but this time the Trumps were prepared. Donald leaned back in his chair watching Sterling's tirade on TV. "He doesn't know what's coming," Donald said, a sly smile playing on his lips. Despite the growing media frenzy, Barron remained calm. He spent the next day quietly at home, reflecting on the speech and its aftermath. Melania tried to shield him from the noise, but Barron was determined to face it. "I need to do more," he told his mother as they sat in the living room. "Sterling won't stop, and I won't either." Melania reached for his hand. "You've already done so much, Barron, more than anyone could have asked." Donald walked into the room, his presence commanding as always. "Barron's right," he said. "This isn't over. Sterling needs to learn that our family doesn't back down." The family agreed on a plan. Barron would give a follow-up interview, this time addressing Sterling directly. It wasn't just about defending Melania anymore. It was about standing up to the growing culture of disrespect. As the interview date approached, Barron prepared himself mentally and emotionally. He knew the stakes were high, but he was ready. The day of the interview arrived, and as Barron stepped into the studio, the room buzzed with anticipation. What he would say next would change everything. The room was bathed in bright studio lights. Cameras clicked, and the hum of whispered conversations filled the air as Barron Trump took his seat across from the interviewer. He sat tall, his expression calm but determined. The host, a respected journalist, began with a warm smile. "Barron, thank you for being here. Many were moved by your speech. Why did you feel it was important to speak up for your mother?" Barron leaned forward slightly, his hands resting on the table. "Because silence sometimes feels like acceptance. My mom has faced criticism for years, but the words used by Mr. Sterling went beyond politics. They attacked her character. I couldn't stay silent when I knew the truth." The audience watching from home felt a pang in their hearts. Barron's sincerity was unmistakable. For a young man, his words carried wisdom far beyond his years. The journalist nodded. "What would you say to people who think this is just a public relations move?" Barron paused, choosing his words carefully. "I'd say they're wrong. This isn't about politics or headlines. It's about standing up for the people you love, even when it's hard." The journalist was impressed, but as the questions deepened, so did the emotional stakes. Midway through the interview, the journalist asked a question that made the room grow quiet. "What's one thing about your mother that you wish people understood?" Barron's face softened, and he took a deep breath. "That she's not as distant as people think. My mom has a quiet strength, but she feels everything deeply. I remember a night when I was 12 years old. She had just come back from visiting a hospital for children. I heard her crying in her room. When I asked her why, she said, 'It's hard to see so much pain and not be able to fix it all.'" His voice wavered, and tears brimmed in his eyes. "She carries the weight of those moments. People think she doesn't care, but I've seen her stay up late writing letters to parents who lost their children, making sure they feel supported. That's who my mom really is." The journalist's voice softened. "That's a powerful image, Barron." Viewers at home were visibly moved. In living rooms across the country, tears flowed as grandparents and parents related to Melania's quiet struggles. Barron's words peeled back the layers of public perception, revealing a mother's heart. But the moment of vulnerability wasn't the end. The tension was building towards something even greater. Just as the interview ended, news broke that David Sterling had issued a fiery rebuttal. On his own show, he dismissed Barron's words as emotionally manipulative and doubled down on his earlier criticisms of Melania. "Let's not forget," Sterling sneered, That the Trumps are masters of controlling the narrative. This sudden rise of Barron Trump? It's just another calculated move. The Trump family watched the segment in their home. Donald was visibly angry, pacing the room. "This guy doesn't know when to quit," he muttered. Melania, however, remained calm. She looked at Barron. "What do you want to do?" Barron's jaw tightened. "I want to face him," he said firmly. Donald stopped pacing. "You're sure about this? Sterling is ruthless." Barron nodded. "I've come this far. If I back down now, what does that say about everything I've said?" The room was silent, the weight of the decision heavy. Finally, Donald smiled, a rare moment of approval. "Then we'll make sure you're ready." The stage was set for a confrontation that no one could predict. The day after Sterling's rebuttal, Barron made a bold move. He posted a statement on social media challenging Sterling to a public debate. The post quickly went viral, with millions sharing and commenting. "Mr. Sterling, you've questioned my sincerity and my family's values. Let's discuss this face to face. No scripts, no edits, just the truth," Barron wrote. The media exploded. Networks debated whether Sterling would accept the challenge, and viewers were captivated by Barron's courage. Even those who previously dismissed him now saw a young man willing to fight for his family. In the Trump household, the air was thick with anticipation. Donald watched the news with a smirk. "He has no choice but to respond," he said confidently. Melania, ever the calm presence, placed a hand on Barron's shoulder. "This is a big step. Are you ready?" Barron nodded. "I'm not afraid of him, Mom. I know what I stand for." Hours later, Sterling broke his silence, appearing on his show to accept the debate. "If Barron Trump wants to face me, I'm more than happy to oblige. Let's see if the kid can handle the heat." The stage was set for an unforgettable confrontation. The days leading up to the debate were intense. Barron worked tirelessly with his parents and advisors to prepare. Donald, a master of public speaking, coached him on how to remain composed under pressure. "Remember," Donald said, "he'll try to bait you into losing your temper. Don't give him the satisfaction. Stay calm, stay sharp." Melania focused on helping Barron with the emotional side. "Speak from your heart," she told him. "People can tell when you're being genuine. That's your greatest strength." Barron listened intently, soaking in their advice. Despite his nerves, he felt a growing sense of purpose. This wasn't just about defending his mother. It was about standing up for values that mattered. On the night before the debate, Barron sat alone in his room, reflecting. He thought about all the times his mother had been misunderstood and all the sacrifices she had made for their family. He knew this was his chance to show the world who she truly was. As he closed his eyes to pray for strength, a quiet determination settled over him. Tomorrow would be a defining moment, not just for him, but for his entire family. The debate was held in a grand auditorium, packed with reporters, spectators, and cameras broadcasting live to millions. Barron walked onto the stage with confidence, his tall frame and calm demeanor commanding attention. Sterling was already seated, exuding arrogance. The moderator began with opening remarks, then turned to Barron. "Why did you feel it was necessary to challenge Mr. Sterling?" Barron looked directly at Sterling as he answered. "Because when someone spreads lies and hate, it's our responsibility to stand up for the truth. I couldn't let him attack my mother's character without showing the world who she really is." The audience erupted in applause. Sterling smirked but remained silent. As the debate unfolded, Barron's composure and thoughtful responses left the audience in awe. When Sterling tried to undermine him, Barron countered with calm, logical arguments that exposed the flaws in Sterling's points. At one point, Sterling attempted to mock Barron's age. What does a 17-year-old know about the complexities of the world? Barron's response was powerful. Respect doesn't require age or experience. It requires understanding and compassion. Maybe that's something you should think about. The crowd roared with approval, leaving Sterling visibly shaken. As the debate neared its conclusion, the tension in the room was palpable. Sterling, cornered by Barron's articulate responses, tried one last desperate tactic. "You're just repeating what your parents have told you," Sterling sneered. "Do you even have your own opinions, or are you just their puppet?" The comment drew gasps from the audience. Barron paused, his face calm but resolute. "You're right about one thing," Barron said, his voice steady. "I've learned a lot from my parents. My dad taught me to stand firm in my beliefs. My mom taught me the power of kindness and resilience. But I speak for myself, and what I believe is simple. Attacking someone's character without knowing them is cowardly. That's not strength, it's weakness." The room fell silent. Even Sterling seemed momentarily stunned. Barron continued, his voice thick with emotion. "My mother has shown more courage in her quiet moments than some people ever will in their loudest. She doesn't need me to defend her, but I'm proud to do it because she deserves respect." The audience erupted into applause, some standing with tears in their eyes. Sterling's smug demeanor cracked under the weight of Barron's words. After the debate, Barron stepped backstage, exhausted but relieved. Donald was there waiting, a rare look of pride in his eyes. "You were incredible out there, son," Donald said, clapping him on the shoulder. "You handled yourself like a pro." Melania, her eyes glistening with tears, pulled Barron into a hug. "You showed the world who you are, Barron, and who we are as a family. Thank you." The debate became the top news story, with millions praising Barron's poise and authenticity. Social media was flooded with support, and commentators across the political spectrum admitted they underestimated him. But the most unexpected moment came later that evening. Sterling issued a public apology. "I was wrong to attack Melania Trump's character," he said on air, "and Barron Trump showed me that grace and wisdom don't depend on age." The Trumps watched the broadcast together, stunned. Melania turned to Barron, her voice soft. "You changed the narrative, my love. Not with anger, but with dignity." Barron smiled, but his heart was full of gratitude. He had faced the storm and come out stronger. Weeks later, Barron stood in a quiet garden at Mar-a-Lago, reflecting on everything that had happened. The debate wasn't just a victory, it was a lesson about courage, family, and truth. Donald joined him, a rare moment of quiet between father and son. "You know, Barron, what you did out there wasn't just defending your mom. You showed the world who you are. I couldn't be prouder." Barron nodded. "I just wanted people to see the truth. She's given so much without asking for anything in return." Later that night, Barron shared a final message online. "Standing up for what's right isn't always easy, but it's worth it. My family taught me that, and I hope this inspires others to do the same." As viewers watched this story unfold, tears flowed freely. Barron's strength reminded them of their own families, their own struggles, and the power of love and resilience. Dear viewers, if this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like, comment, and subscribe. Share your thoughts in the comments. How did this story move you? Let's keep spreading positivity and support for one another. Together, we can create a community that uplifts and inspires. Thank you for being part of this journey.